Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. And you know what? We're not talking business that much today. But if you know anything about the show, if you've been a long-time subscriber, first of all, thank you. Love having you here. But we want to build the complete entrepreneur on this show. There is more to life than business. There is life. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how the mental health industry kind of doesn't do men a very good service out there. And we're going to talk about men's mental health. So for you ladies, just pay attention because you probably know a man or two in your life and you might pick some things up. But this conversation, I'm excited to dive into. It's an important one, and especially for business owners and entrepreneurs. And I have an amazing guest to help me with it because God knows I don't know anything about mental health, but I have a guest who does, Marc Azoulay, founder of Men's Mental Health Online. Marc, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be on the show. Yeah, it's a really important topic. A lot of the clients I work with are entrepreneurs, are young men that are excelling in business but struggling in life. So I'm excited to kind of dive in and share some tips about how you might want to work with that.
Yeah, so I think messed up the name of your company. So please correct me. I apologize. Men's Therapy Online, right?
Men's Therapy Online. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Good
so,
SEO.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I need Men's Therapy Online.
Yeah.
I love it. It's very, very clever. But let's talk about this because a lot of therapy is in person traditionally. I've seen the trend to go online and do like the texting therapy and all these different things. You've seen the commercials for them, right? But tell me about where your business came from and how you came to doing it online.
Yeah. So very long story short, I've been a therapist for over 10 years. I worked in person up until COVID, where I switched online, right? We couldn't do in-person counseling due to the CDC recommendations and things like that. And I found that not only did I love it, my clients loved it. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I work with a lot of fathers. I work with a lot of people that have super busy schedules, and not having to commute is a big deal. I also work with guys that are traveling a lot for work, so they can access me wherever they are. They can call me from, a meeting room. They can book aside time, and they can just fit therapy right into their day. So I found that instead of it being having like a logistical hurdle, guys can just plug in, right? Also with online, we have like a Slack channel where all of our guys can talk with each other. So there's like a community aspect that isn't really possible with in person in that way. And we're also sharing resources and podcasts, and I can, screen share. So like it just adds all these different dimensions to the work. Yeah, most therapists prefer in person, but I think it's because they don't know how to use technology, frankly. They don't leverage the online platform. So it does just feel like a downgrade, but we really leverage it to kind of make a more modern therapy experience for people.
That's interesting. One thing that stood out is you said it's a community, and I don't know that I've heard that in the traditional therapy approach. Is that unique?
It's pretty unique. Yeah, that's kind of what we're all about, is we're creating a community of emotionally intelligent men. So basically in my early recovery, I'm recovered from drug addiction for about 15 years. I've been sober for a while, but I got out. I didn't know how to talk to guys. I didn't have any guy friends, and I also had no game with girls. So that's also a whole nother story. But I couldn't talk with guys because the guys that I was connecting with wanted to talk about, dating and drinking and partying and, sports, which was fine. Like I was just there, but I had all these deeper emotional needs and deeper emotional connections. So the idea behind MTO is creating that for people that have been through a therapy process and want to talk to other guys that get it, that want to talk about things like spirituality or like values and ethics, or, relationship nuances. We're trying to inspire each other to be the best men that we can be. I think guys, especially entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, can be so isolated that it's really critical to be with other people that are on the path and are also trying to crush it in life.
Yeah, it's hard to find those people, which is part of the reason I created this podcast, because I remember those days back in my early business journey. All my friends who I had been friends with in high school and college, you go to talk to them and you want to talk about business stuff or what, just like what you're doing in life. And they're talking about everything you just said, like drinking, partying, girls. I'm like, I'm not there. I'm married. I have a family. I have a business. Like I'm trying to grow this business. We are not on the same page. So to find those people and to have that community, especially people who have gone through that transition, seems really, really powerful. And I love that. But I'm curious because we're talking about how the mental health industry has failed men. Good percentage of our listeners are men. And like I said to the women earlier, you probably have a husband or men in your life, a boyfriend, whatever. But how has the mental health industry failed men?
Oh, so many ways. So I'll start, and this is actually for the women out there. Guys, when I say this, you'll be like, yeah, for sure. But what women don't understand about guys sometimes is that sitting and talking about our feelings is not natural to us. Women love that. They bond through that. They connect through that. They need that. And they need their men to do that, right? But for guys, it takes energy for most of us. It takes a lot of work. It's not a natural format. So the idea of psychotherapy, traditional therapy, which is sitting and talking about your feelings in a room with essentially a stranger for 50 minutes, is like really weird. It's not nourishing for us. It's actually very difficult because we're encountering, weird feelings. Maybe we're saying stuff that we're not very proud of, that we're ashamed about. A lot of guys are afraid of revealing themselves to be like a monster or a villain. A lot of guys have that kind of like, they're afraid of their own aggression and being a predator or being a creep. So we often censor a lot in psychotherapy, especially with a female therapist. So what MTO does, which is really different, is one, utilizing online platforms, which men are more familiar with. But two, we do a lot of cool men shit. So we do outdoor backpacking retreats. We do hikes. We do community events. We leverage the Colorado wilderness in a way because guys grow through challenge. So a lot of our, seeing the way our groups work is also based on accountability and challenge. So the idea is we are task-oriented psychotherapy. We're challenge, we're problem-solving oriented psychotherapy, which is really different from typical therapy. Typical therapy is more exploration. There's kind of that stereotype of the therapist that just like nods and says, wow, that must be so difficult. That must be so hard. And like, we don't want that. As men, we like spit that shit back out. We want someone that's like calls us on our bullshit, and challenges us to really grow. That sets the challenge at an acceptable level and then coaches us to get to that challenge. So being a men's only program and having only male clinicians, we're able to really work with the male brain and the male psyche in ways that I think traditional therapy really, really doesn't. And a lot of men bounce off of therapy or they just don't really, it doesn't really click with them.
Yeah, I've been vocal on this show, especially about how I feel about the therapy industry,
Yeah.
because it's everything you said, right? But I've also said it's the greatest business model because it's designed to just keep their clients, and I don't think that's effective for the client.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
that's all I'll say on this episode. But it sounds like you don't do that, which is really your point to get people to grow and get past kind of the challenges they're facing. Tell me about the timeline, like when you first meet somebody as a client to, I don't want to say healed because I think that journey is ongoing for the rest of our lives, but what does that progress phase look like until the point where they're now thriving?
Yeah. So what a lot of therapists won't tell you, and by the way, you can shit talk my industry. I shit talk my industry all the time. So please. What a lot of therapists won't tell you is that therapy has diminishing returns after about 2 years, 3 years for most people. Because you're absolutely right. A lot of therapists will keep people for a decade and more. And there is that Uber user. Like I am an Uber user. I've been in individual therapy forever, but I'm also a therapist, and this is like my life, right? But for the average person, 1, 2, 3 years is really all you need in individual therapy, quite frankly, where you're figuring out your life story is the way I'd like to talk about it, doing like the autobiography work, right? So you're going back and you're figuring out how you became who you are, right? Whether that's built from trauma, built from your culture, built from early childhood experiences, heartbreak, training, media, whatever, right? You're like really unpacking the operating system of your brain so that you then have the power to rewire it. You're like, okay, cool. Maybe I want to keep some of these things I learned from my parents. Maybe I want to change this one. Maybe there's a couple big conversations that you have to have, especially for young men, right? There's often a big conversation that we have to have with our partners, right? About something that we've kept down for a long time, or with our parents, right? Or with our community, with our business partner, whatever it is, right? So you get some of those like big wins, I think, in the first couple of years of therapy and really get your life set on a better course, right? Then what we do is we move you into a group, right? So at that point, right, like you can opt in or opt out. But the idea is now you're with other dudes who have done that autobiography work. And it's more of a coaching model. It's more of kind of like a chosen family. It's more of like, you can think like a mastermind group where you're with other dudes that have the emotional skills that you also have. And it's about how do you exceed and how do you thrive. So our groups, right? Like, yeah, they're about therapy, but they're also about business, right? They're also about relationships. They're also about parenting, right? They're about kind of that day-to-day struggles and advice that you need just to get through stuff. And our groups are intergenerational. So we often have people, parenting is a good example. We have people that have kids that are in their 20s and we have people that are just starting to have kids. And it's really cool to be able to access men that are open about that journey so you can learn from it in a real way, not just getting kind of like, the cliche stuff like, oh, there's no manual for having a kid, right? Like you get the real experience of people that have been through different stages of life. So, yeah.
Which is cool because then you can obviously learn from them. But I think the difference is when you are an emotionally intelligent or secure even individual, you can have those conversations and learn from them, not just say the things like there's no manual for kids. Like I know I have kids. I understood that when I walked out of the hospital, there was no manual. I got that the first time. I don't need to repeat that story for all of my kids. So I love that. And I also am curious what in the business context, what does it look like when someone is first approaching you, they first become a client, and now they've graduated, they've written their autobiography. What is that second phase when they start to rewrite their story or choose kind of where they go from there? Because, and this is the part that I don't like about therapy, if you continue to just read your autobiography, like it's really boring. It doesn't change. If you just read the past over and over, you don't get anywhere, and you actually it may even get worse. I've seen it get worse for people because you think that's your current reality. So in stage two, in your groups, where do the men go once they understand that and now they're designing their new life?
Yeah. So what you just said, right, is why men don't like therapy, is because for a lot of therapists can instill a victim mentality in people, right? Or a trauma survivor mentality in people. And I think as a lot of guys, we spit that shit back out just like you did and just like I do, right? It's like, fuck that, right? I'm not a victim to something that happened 20 years ago, right? This still isn't like fucking me up. This still isn't like changing the way that I work and ruining my relationships because of something that like I can't change. Like guys hate that idea. And I hate that idea. I'm with you, right? So the idea with the groups, like I was saying, it becomes more day to day. It becomes more future focused. It becomes that kind of accountability structure that I was talking about. It's this idea of, I use a lot of like, it's called mythopoetic, like kind of ancestral ancient shit in my work. And this idea of like a men's lodge, right? So in some indigenous cultures, right, the men would all go out in the day. Some would be hunters, some would be craftsmen, some would be masons, some would be builders, some would be fathers. But then they'd gather at the men's lodge, right? In modern day, this is replaced by the bar, right? But in the beginning, it was just actually like a tent that they would go and just talk about their day. And they would be aware of what everyone else is doing. They would strategize as a community and they would move forward. So the next day when they go out into their lives, they're coming from a shared base, right? You can think of like a stand-up meeting, right? But so we're creating that in the men's groups where it's like you learn about other people's experiences and then you move forward and bring it into your life. That's the main thing, right? It's not just about rehashing your story and being a victim. And because we're all dudes, we call that shit out, right? Like in my groups, like we don't really have a tolerance for that. When someone's like, oh yeah, it's because of my childhood, we'll be like, yes. And what are you going to do about it? Right? Like, yes, this might be more difficult for you because you have a childhood experience, right? Yes, maybe you're predisposed to struggling with this particular issue, but you still take responsibility for it. You still have to go out there and make a meaningful change. And I think being with other guys, again, in a group setting, in a hunting party, in a squad, right? Like as men, like we really gather in groups. I think we need other men to hold each other accountable and to make sure that we're being honorable and ethical. Make sure that we're making good decisions and we're not taking like the lazy way out or the greedy way out. So it becomes, more of like a, steel sharpens steel type situation in those groups.
Yeah. And it's powerful too. You have to be in those type of relationships. And I have this tendency to, I want to help people, but I'm also curious, like when you run into someone who hasn't done the work, I've never done traditional therapy, but I have done this sort of work on myself. Yeah. When I talk to someone who hasn't, one thing I noticed is that the conversation stays very surface level. So my question is, what does it look like? That I'm sure is one sort of a marker, but how else can you tell that someone maybe needs this work? And then also, how do you, if you want to help them, or if you want to build a relationship with them, like how do you approach suggesting this type of a resource, if you would?
Yeah. So kind of, I mean, the way you talk about the shout conversation, big one, right? Like guys that seem like kind of not all the way there. They can't hold eye contact. They kind of use those like platitudes, like, there's no manual for kids or whatever, or like happy wife, happy life, right? They seem kind of like NPCs, right? To use kind of like the Zoomer language, right? Like that's something I think also that is critical with those guys is like they often have a double life. So they often have like a life where they work hard. They call it like work hard, play hard. But like they'll work hard and then they'll have another life where they're like doing cocaine or like have strippers or something, right? Or they have like this crazy hobby that like is great, but you can tell that all their aggression, all their passion is channeled into there. Their life is very fragmented. Whereas I think if therapy is successful and this personal work is successful, whether it's through therapy or coaching or books or whatever, right? Your life is more integrated, right? You're more of like a full character versus having to really compartmentalize different parts of your life. It becomes a more personality based thing. So yeah, so the way to do it, unfortunately, with guys, it's hard. Usually they have to break. Usually there has to be, a divorce or a relapse or they lose their job or something. And then you can be like, hey, maybe you should look at yourself. I think it's really the hard truth is I think a lot of guys don't do this proactively, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think that's, I've seen that play out. I think it's true. And maybe you'll find a better way. If you do, come let us know about it. How to get in front of it. But yeah, those things they happen. Well, that stuff happens in business too. Business tends to break you if you're not already broken. And that's why I think this is a valuable conversation, especially for this show, because business is hard and life is hard. And if you don't understand how to manage yourself and how you show up, it only gets harder. So I love this conversation. I tossed your website on the screen here. It'll be down in the show notes below, but tell me a little bit about what someone can go find on your website and maybe learn about the retreats that you have, which sound amazing in the Colorado wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just really quickly, right? Like you can have the best business idea, but if your psyche isn't able to handle it, it will fail.
Yeah.
So if there's any kind of call to action, it's like work on yourself because you're the vehicle for your idea. Right. So it takes both. But yeah, so we're menstherapy.online. We do individual, group, and retreats. And the retreats are awesome. We do 3 a year. 2 of them are Bill Wilderness backpacking retreats. And then one's a traditional men's retreat, something called psychodrama, where you kind of like act out the issues that are going on in your head. That's based in Boulder, Colorado. So yeah, check us out. We also have some online courses. We have a bunch of free materials. There's a book list. There's all kinds of stuff to check out, blogs. But that's the main thing, menstherapy.online.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, Mark. I appreciate you being here. Like I said, this is such an important conversation, and one that I think we need to bring to the forefront, because my whole goal is to create a successful, whole entrepreneur. And if you're not whole, you can't be whole. So that's kind of obvious, right? So if this resonates with you, I encourage you to go take that next step. Reach out, ladies too. If you know a man where this might be, that fragmentation in his life might be showing up, you have a resource now. So, Mark, I'd love to end the episodes with a question. We believe that powerful questions get powerful answers. So for anyone listening, based on what we talked about today, what's that question you would want them to think about until they got that powerful answer in their lives, to help them move forward, maybe get past that autobiography stage in their life, whatever it is? What's the powerful question you want them to ask?
Yeah, I would say, what is your biggest secret? And what would it be like if everybody knew it?
What's the feeling that's supposed to come up when you answer that question?
Terror and then relief.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I'll have to give that some thought. That's an interesting question, because I would assume it would be terror and then more terror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think the idea is a big part of therapy, right? Is owning your secrets and having them not have power over you, right? It's only a power because it's a secret, right? It only controls you because you're ashamed of it. So by overcoming that shame, sharing it and integrating it, again, owning it in your life, working on it, taking responsibility for it, that's how you become a stronger man and a stronger business owner and a stronger person. It's not letting it control you from the shadows.
Interesting. Wow. I like that. That is indeed a powerful question. Mark, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate the opportunity.
For those of you watching and listening, you have your instructions. If you're down in the show notes below, go check out menstherapy.online for some more resources. Thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're on, watching or listening. We love bringing these episodes to you 5 days of the week so you can move your business, your life, your relationship, and of course your mental health forward every single day and build the complete entrepreneur. We'll see you on the next episode.